So please put any questions you have for our speakers in the Q&A box. So our first speaker this evening is Ailbhe Smyth. And Ailbhe is a long-time feminist LGBTQ campaigner. She's a former founding head of Women's Studies in UCD. She co-founded and led the coalition to repeal the 8th Amendment. She was co-director of Together for Yes, the national civil society campaign to remove the 8th Amendment from the Irish Constitution. And she was also a leading member in the referendum campaign for marriage equality in 2015. And this year, in 2022, Ailbhe was conferred with the freedom of the city of Dublin, our capital city, in recognition of her long-standing time as a campaigner for women's rights, for social justice and for equality. So it's a real delight to have you here this evening, Ailbhe. And I mean, I think that's a good place to start in terms of maybe telling people a bit about your journey as a campaigner and how you have got involved in the campaign for abortion rights.
Yeah, thanks, Orla. And just to say, you know, it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you. We fought many battles together, but also, of course, with Justina and Lieta, and looking forward to hearing so much about your differently fascinating situations in Chile and in Poland. I mean, I suppose sometimes people describe me as a veteran, and this is quite true. I mean, I became involved when in abortion campaigning, when I became involved in the women's movement, which was towards the end of the 1970s. And really, I have been through a whole spectrum of referendums. We've actually had, I think it's technically 6 since 1983, which was when the Irish electorate banned abortion completely and put it into the constitution. And of course, ever after that, from 1983 onwards, I and so many others were fighting against that terrible prohibition, which was so damaging to women, to their health, to their lives, and which went on being damaging. And we had more referendums then in 1992, when, in fact, quite interestingly, we were asked if we wanted to remove the threat of suicide as grounds for abortion and as a risk to a woman's life. And we said, no, we didn't want to remove that. And we said we did not want to remove the right to travel to Britain, or indeed the right to information. So in a funny way, we kind of won that referendum, and it showed that things were changing. And then we had another referendum in 2002, which came back on the threat of suicide. And we said, no, you've asked us that before, go away. And then nothing happened. And it wasn't until after the death of Savita Halappanavar, who was refused an abortion when she was miscarrying spontaneously in 2012, that we decided to fight for abortion again. And that was really it. That's it in a nutshell. We can come back to the other issues. And just to say for myself, I've been fighting for that length of time because I absolutely think that abortion is a fundamental human freedom. All women and people who become pregnant should be able to access abortion. And I also think it should be kept well outside the law.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I think for people listening, if you could maybe say a little bit about what did you think was different about the referendum in 2018 that led to such a historic result?
Well, I think it was very, very different. First of all, back in 1983, we were really trying to desperately to extricate ourselves from the stranglehold control of the Catholic Church and a still very conservative state. Whereas when we came up to 2012, when we came into the 2000s, Ireland was much more forward-looking, much more open, much more directly and centrally involved in Europe. And everything had been indicating to us that we had become a much more secular state. We were technically a secular state, but Irish people, while still describing themselves as Catholic, as they continue to do, had actually begun to think for themselves in terms of their moral decisions. So it was very clear, I think, in 2010, 2011, that we needed to do something about abortion. And then sadly, of course, Savita Ailbhe died, and there was a huge rush of emotion from all around the country, people just coming out onto the streets. And that made it very clear that people felt strongly about abortion and about getting rid of our constitutional ban, which we had never felt as strongly before. So that was a massive change. And young people were absolutely behind it. And we had also just won, well, we were campaigning at that time for marriage equality for lesbians and gays. And I mean, I knew that attitudes towards, even towards lesbians, had changed considerably. We had legislation on the books for coming on the books for trans people. Ireland was very changed. So we were dealing with a very different situation. And I'll maybe just finish with one point on this, which is that because we had that confidence that Ireland had changed, we were able to say, following Savita's death, well, we're going to take charge of this. It's not their story anymore, and it's not for the politicians. This is for the people. We are going to strategically decide how we are going to fight this referendum. It's going to be our narrative. It's going to be done on our terms. We're going to change the way we talk about abortion. And I think that taking control, in which we eventually did in 2013, was really important, because we were no longer dancing to the tune of our opponents, or indeed some very cowardly politicians. We were saying, women are leading the charge, we're going to change this, and come what may, we will do it, which indeed we did in 2018, as you very well know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just as a final question, and then obviously we'll come back to you in the Q&A, you know, you're still you're continue to be a leading campaigner in terms of women's rights and reproductive rights. So what keeps you going? What motivates you?
The fact that we don't have equality, that we don't have justice, that, you know, there is a very, very heavy burden borne, particularly by women who are discriminated against, who are poor, who are particularly vulnerable, who, because of a disability, perhaps sexuality, whatever. I mean, you look at all of those intersecting factors in our lives, and you see that in each case, it is women who have less and the least who continue to suffer. So that somebody who's white, middle class, and so on and so forth, like me, you know, I think my generation has benefited a good deal, but it's my generation of middle class women who have tended more. So, you know, that keeps you really involved. I look at my daughter, I look at my granddaughter, I look at the world, and I think, you know, feminism, we've only just begun to peel away those layers and layers and layers of patriarchy, and to say it has to stop. And frankly, you know, there is no statute of limitations on campaigning and activism. And I'll go on doing it until such time as I can physically do it no longer, and until such time as we get that equality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know as well from all our members in the Women's Council, we really need you to keep doing that, because you are such an incredible, and I'm genuinely saying this, an incredible inspiration, I think, particularly to younger women who really, I suppose, look up to you. So yeah.
Well, just to say, the funny thing is, it's the young women and women of your generation who keep me going and inspire me. So there you go. It's completely mutual.
Yeah. Thanks, Ailbhe. Okay, so I now want to introduce Justyna Wydrinska, and it's a real pleasure and an honor for I think for us to have you here, Justyna, this evening. Justyna is a women's human rights defender and founder of the website Women on the Net, which was Poland's first online forum supporting women seeking safe abortions. She currently works with the Abortion Dream Team, which is a grassroots initiative of women human rights defenders who came together in October 2016 with the purpose of providing assistance to those who needed abortion. And yeah, so a real pleasure to have you here, Justyna. And just maybe to start off, I think it would be I think really valuable for people if you spoke a bit about what Women on the Net is and the Abortion Dream Team.
Thank you for this quite a long introduction. I feel a little bit ashamed. Yes, I actually work still in both those two organizations because Women on the Net are still existing. And what we did from the very beginning is to build the online forum where people could ask us, those who have abortion experience, about how the medical abortion is in real, because everybody were so afraid of taking pills. We started in 2006, so it was really, really long ago. And also the Women on Web, the first organization who started to send pills to Poland, they also started in the same year. So really, here in this country, nobody knew what the pills are and how it works, that it is really safe. So we started to share their experience of our own abortions. And this is why it started. I just drawn into the supporting people with the information and with supporting during taking pills. And through those years, I've met Kinga Jelińska, Natalia Broniarczyk, and also Karolina Więckiewicz. And in 2016, we've started to collaborate in our this team of 4 person. And we thought that we have to start and travel around the country. And because the online informing is not enough, even if we have our own helpline, was still not enough. We have to meet people in real. And because we really knew each other very well and we together feel much, much stronger. So we felt, okay, we should do this. And we started to organize meetings like with real people in around the whole country and talk about abortion without no taboo, really no taboo about how the abortion looks like, that the fetus looks like this and this. So there were no lies. And we started to also use the language which is destigmatizing the abortion, and we try to get the positive meaning to this word. So this is how the abortion gym started, and the name was, of course, not the idea. One of the journalists used the name in one of the newspapers, so we use it because it was kind of controversial in one way, and also very close to us. Mm. So right now, because of the COVID and many things which has happened from 2016 when we started, we also joined to Abortion Without Borders. Both two organizations I am in, the Women on the Net and also the Abortion Dream Team. Right now we build together with other 4 organizations, Abortion Without Borders, and we try to help people with not only information, not only logistical things, but also with money. And we do it with Abortion Support Network, which you probably know very well.
Yeah, thanks. Just, I think that's really useful for people, just in terms of getting a sense of those 2 brilliant organizations and initiatives. And I think it would be helpful maybe if you tell us a bit about currently what's the situation in Poland with regard to access to abortion.
The Polish law is really very, very tricky, and even for those who live here, it's sometimes they don't understand how it works, because we have the law which describes how we can get and in what circumstances we can get abortion in the hospitals. And right now, from 2020, it is just 2 years, and we have only 2 situations when we can get abortion in the hospitals because of the crime and when our life and health is in danger. And what is really the most for us important, that we can do self-managed abortion up to 22 weeks, and we are not criminalized at all. We as a people who want to stop our own pregnancies, but all those who can try to help us in many, many ways. Like, for example, borrowing the money, or like ordering pills, sharing our own pills, doctors who will try to do surgical abortions in the private cabinets or the practices. Everybody who is involved in a process of helping, those persons can be criminalized, and this is the maximum sentence is 3 years in jail. So this is why people, and because this self-managed things are not described in abortion law, because it is very old, it's from 93, where nobody thought that there could be some abortion pills and people could do abortions by themselves. So this is not described, and why? Because if it's not described, we still can use this, the gap in the law, and we can stop our own pregnancies with the pills. But of course, our government does everything what is possible to stop us from getting the pills, blocking it in a custom office. So there are those organizations who try to send pills into the country, like Women Help Women or Women on Web. They really do everything, to deliver pills to people who order them.
Oh, thanks, Justina. And I'm very conscious this evening just the extent in which you have been persecuted and harassed for the work that you're doing for women's reproductive rights. And I think if it's okay with you, tell us a bit about that and the current case against you in Poland.
So this is the situation when I try to help other person, because it was so hard situation for not only for this person, but the one story which was very close to my own life. So I decided to share my own pills, which I have for my own use. And her husband somehow got this information, because he was very abusive and controlling one. So he got this information and he called the police to his own house. And when she came with the package of pills to home, the police was waiting for her and took the pills from her. So she couldn't use those pills and she couldn't stop the pregnancy. But because on this package of pills, there was my phone number. So, and all the SIM cards in Poland have to be registered to a person. So this is why they got my data. And this is the situation when I try to avoid not to sending pills ever, but it was really so close to my own life, because I was also the victim of home violence in my marriage. So this is why I did it, and I thought this is how we should help each other in a situation when you cannot travel abroad, you stuck at home, and it was the February 2020, the beginning of the pandemic, the borders were closed, so really I couldn't do anything like send the pills to her. And the last trial was last Friday, and it showed that this is not only the court case because of sending pills to other person. This I can say right now the battle goes further, because it started to be about activism, about what I do and what I did for many years, sharing the information. And it looks that the government wants to threaten us somehow to avoid doing our job, or to threaten us so much to stop doing this job because of the fear. And it is kind of hard to be in the court and see how it goes. And I am at the point that I will not be threatened by this. We are doing this thing so long, and it is so important that I will not stop I'm not afraid of what is happening in the court. And even I receive a sentence, the maximum sentence, still there is appellation, there are other, the highest court, so we go higher and higher. And even if I have to go to a jail, I know there are lots of people who will do everything, like really everything, to avoid me being in jail. So I feel kind of really brave standing in the court, even if I'm so stressed, because it costs a lot of stress to see opposite the ordo juris representative, and knowing that they join to this, and this is not like funny moments.
Oh, thanks, Jeb. Yeah, really well done. And I mean, I know you probably know this, but for, you know, for all of us here in Ireland, yeah, we would just really want to express our solidarity. I think you are incredibly brave. And I think it's really good that people hear about what's happening to activists and to yourself, because it is really important that we actively show our solidarity. So thank you, Justina.
Yes, and being here, I want to really send a lot of like thank yous and kisses and hugs for you, all of you, because I know I cannot like see everything. I still resting after the Friday court case, being in the court, and I'm trying not to work and not to look at the internet. But I know how much you support this case and me in this case, and I'm so grateful for this. You cannot imagine even. It means a lot for me, and also like your being vocal about the situation in your country shows my country and people living in my country how this is important, and this is how people look, see how you react. They know that we cannot stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, the international pressure is really important. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I now want to introduce you to our next speaker, who also provides really vital support to help women and pregnant people to access abortion services in the north of Ireland. So I want to introduce you to Emma Campbell, who's the co-convenor of Alliance for Choice and has been campaigning, has been a really core campaigner since 2011 in Alliance for Choice, helping to secure decriminalisation of abortion. She actively supports women and pregnant people through their abortions as a doula with Luach Cowrack. And she's also completing as well her PhD addressing photography as an activist tool for abortion rights in the University of Ulster. So Emma, thanks very much for joining us. And I was going to start, Emma, just by asking you if you can tell people a bit about Alliance for Choice and how you became involved.
Well, Alliance for Choice have been going a lot longer than I've been involved. So they started around 1996 as an umbrella group of different trade union activists, women's sector activists, and various other political groups who were coming together, midwives, people providing pregnancy counselling and so forth. And since then, they were kind of building up to around 2008 when because of the devolved situation in Northern Ireland from the UK law, for a long time criminal justice was the remit of Westminster, and then in 2008 it was supposed to be devolved to Northern Ireland, and of course because of the strict abortion law it came under criminal rather than health law. And because it was a Labour government, I think a lot of activists were really, really hoping that the Labour government would extend the 67 Act to Northern Ireland. It was tabled to be spoken about, but it all got pushed down for a deal between the DUP and the Labour Party. So I joined very soon after that, when a lot of activists were really quite despondent. I think they sort of felt, and justifiably so, that once it got moved into the hands of Northern Irish politicians, then we'd never see abortion access here at all. So I feel really, really lucky that I got involved when I did, because the people who were there were really the people who were happy to stick at it, even in the worst dire circumstances. So I learned from some really tough cookies, which was amazing. And I suppose you know, what we try and help people coming to abortion rights understand is that anyone can be a powerful activist for abortion rights change. And we all have different talents and so forth. And so, whatever they are, bring them to your activism. So, I suppose my particular interest, although I've done lots of different kinds of lobbying, campaigning, and policy work, and all the boring spreadsheets for people booking buses and things. But I really love trying to engage people on the issue through arts and culture in particular. And I think, you know, as a full island nation, we are storytellers, and we're really, really good storytellers. And so I think our arts and culture offer us a really nice, powerful, engaged, and nuanced way to tell those stories that don't get hijacked by the sort of diametrically opposed media that we're often faced with. So, and then in Northern Ireland, we're in a weird situation where we have one of the best laws in Europe. I think it's almost one of the best laws in the world, barred like Canada and Cuba and maybe Australia, parts of Australia. But because the full services aren't commissioned, the access isn't, it's still not up to scratch. So really,
And I
for
was going to ask you about that, just maybe if
yeah.
you would just to say, you know, so what is access like at the moment for women in the North?
So, if you are under 9 weeks and 6 days, you can get access to early medical abortion via pills in now every health trust in the north. For ages, it was patchy as to which trust was providing. The Western Trust just got a service there last week, which is great news. Um, but there's nothing actually in the primary legislation that says anything about a 10-week limit. So the primary legislation is any reason at all up to 12 weeks, and then any mental or mental health reason up to 24 weeks at all. Just that it has to be signed off by two doctors. So it's just that we don't have the services. So there's been nobody trained. I think if you compare it to what happened in the 26 counties, um, there was a huge there was funding that went into training and resources. There was an advertising campaign. There was a central phone number that was based in Ireland, which was so successful that the aunties tried to piggyback and copy it and so forth. We've had nothing here, and um, where our central access line is via England still, which it's brilliant that BPAS have stepped in, but at the same time, it means people are phoning England for appointments over here, and the people who take the calls in England don't often really know what the services are here. And the other thing is there is a lot of misinformation around what conscientious objection is for medical staff, how far it can actually go, and there's I think a misconception about when it can be used as well. So for now, we still are helping people get access to the pills in the north and south, actually, because of the law here around activists helping women, means that we can't be criminalized, whereas obviously you still can in the south. Um, so yeah, it's just if we're still here doing that, it means that the provision isn't adequate. But one of the reasons we really, really pushed for decriminalization is because we knew that there are always people who fall through the gaps, and you need to try and make the law that will help the most marginalized. And so, for the most part, people in our equivalent of direct provision, so asylum seekers, refugees, and recent migrants often find it very difficult to access services. Obviously, English is their second language, and it's hard enough for people with English as their first language to find out what the services are here. So, um, I suppose a bit like ASN, Abortion Support Network, we very rarely are dealing with the straightforward cases. So often we're dealing with people who are either living in hostels or living in houses of multiple occupancy, or victims of domestic abuse and violence, or um, sometimes we have people who come to us because they can't use their local clinic because people they know or family members are the people protesting outside the clinics. We didn't get telemedicine during COVID when everybody, when England, Ireland, and Wales and Scotland all did, and we didn't. So, yeah, so we're essentially, I guess, just filling the gaps that shouldn't be there if the law was provided for in full.
Thanks, Emma. I think that really sets the scene really well in terms of just what it's like for women in the North at the minute. And looking to the future in terms of sort of where you see the campaign going for Alliance for Choice. So maybe just, maybe paint us that picture in terms of, what do you see as the next steps?
Well, we're always having to work across 3 jurisdictions because of the complex political backdrop in Northern Ireland. So we do a lot of shared working across the island. Obviously keeping an eye on what's happening with law updates and so forth in the south, but also having to be in contact with the Northern Ireland office in Westminster. We don't have a government again at the minute. And the last time that was the opportunity that sort of delivered abortion, but this time it's making it harder to commission the services. So it's trying to make sure that we have allies in all of those places. And because the global abortion fight network is so great and so strong, then we do still have those allies in the 2 houses in Westminster. We have allies in the north, and for the first time, we had a pro-choice majority in Stormont when there was the vote against severe fetal anomalies being taken out of the legislation. So that was really huge, and it interesting to see what Sinn Féin do, because what they voted for in the end in the north is more progressive than what they've voted for in the south. So yeah, we just have to keep an eye on the future, because who knows what's going to happen constitutionally, and that'll have a big impact on our care. And also we have to keep an eye on the National Health Service, which is currently being gutted by the Tory government in England, and obviously that has an impact on what gets commissioned and provided for. So we envisage that the biggest stumbling block after the drafting and commissioning of services will be the argument over who pays for it. So we're expecting that in the future, and that to be something that we'll be pushing on. Yeah.
Thanks, Emma. I think you really show just how challenging the context is in the north in terms of being able to try to, widen access, but also both dealing with it in terms of a policy and legislation. Yeah, and I think it is so important that we continue that working together, north and south, on abortion access. I'm going to introduce you to our final speaker this evening, who is Ailbhe Vivaldi, who's a lawyer and university professor from Chile, specializing in human rights, sexual and reproductive rights, legal sociology, ethics and feminism. She studies as a lawyer in the University of Chile and currently conducts research at the Human Rights Center of the Diego Portales University in Chile. So you're really welcome, Vivaldi, and I think we're all really interested in hearing about, what's happening in Chile. So maybe if you could start with that, Ailbhe, just telling us about the current situation in Chile.
Wow, many thanks for inviting me and to be part of this panel. Actually, today we are commemorating 3 years since the social uprising in Chile in 2019. And that social uprising, even if it had lots of things going on when that happened, because people were actually shouting in the streets for more equality, for feminism was very important too, but and then we actually decided to have a new constitution. That was one of the main requests or demands of the social movement. But 1 year later, and the referendum, we won by 80%. The idea of having a new constitution. But as you may know, 1 month ago, we lost the referendum. We can discuss later why, etc. But the thing is that at the moment we're living a very difficult moment in general. Regarding to abortion in particular, I would say that abortion was completely forbidden in Pinochet's, because when he was the dictator of Chile, one of his last acts in power was to forbid abortion in all the cases. And This was in 1990, and recently in 2017, abortion was legalized only in 3 cases, on 3 grounds. If the woman's life is in danger, in case of rape, or fetal anomalies incompatible with life. And even if the law is very, very restricted, it was in a way a step forward. We can discuss later if this kind of things are or not at the end a step forward, but I think it was. But the problem has been that the implementation has been very difficult. In that way, it resonates a lot with what Emma was telling us, because of there is lack of information, there is no training to healthcare professionals. Women don't know about the law. This law was approved while Bachelet was the president. She's center left, so she was supporting the law. But 3 months later, the government was a right-wing government that, of course, didn't want the law at all. So they stopped not the law, but they stopped the training, etc. So nowadays we could say that currently we have a left-wing government who have been very, very criticized by the right wing. It has been very, very difficult for Boris to govern. But what I mean is that at the moment, even though if the law has been for 5 years, it's still very, very difficult to access to a legal abortion, because of many barriers that we've been researching. But as I said, mainly the lack of training, problems with rural areas, of the need of specialists, etc. And conscientious objections that is very, very broad in Chile, and even institutions can object, which is quite weird. And that's the main thing that is happening with abortion. Of course, abortions, as you know, still happens, and in that way, feminist organizations have been crucial in order to, as you have been telling about, giving information, helping obtaining the bills, etc. But of course, it depends on who can access to this information or not, because not all women or persons can access to the same have the same kind of contact. So it's still very unfair, and still is in our hands to provide a service that as we know should be equal for everyone.
Yeah. And you mentioned, Lieta, about the referendum, and I suppose, it was something obviously we were all watching closely. Could you say a little bit about what the impact now has been on activists, who are really fighting for abortion rights, and in the aftermath of the referendum?
Yeah. Of course, there are many things to analyze about the referendum that we could go hours and hours. I don't have an explanation, or maybe yes, but well, the thing is that the constitution, people who were elected for writing this constitution were half women and half men, which was the first constitution in the world, as you know. So we had the opportunity of having many of feminist issues or things that are not usually seen by the law as health, as care, for instance, the right to care, or the right to sexual and reproductive rights. The right to abortion was in the new constitution. So we had many rights, and the constitution was called a feminist constitution, because also the power of the state was was feminist in a way. We have more participation, etc. But at the end, as the project failed, it wasn't approved. Now right wing is very strong again, because they think that one of the reasons, for instance, for the rejection obviously is all the feminist demands that were there, other things too, all the original indigenous people, requests, etc. Not just feminists, but feminists are a subject. So abortion has been also a subject, and for us as feminists, we have many challenges today, because as I told you, the right wing is very, very well organized. They are very empowered. So to talk about abortion again has been difficult. So also because of the Congress, the Parliament at this moment is it has a right-wing majority. So it's very difficult also to change the law So the only thing that I think we can do at the moment, of course, feminists, we will always, I mean, fighting for this, but the only thing that we could do more easily is to do like some public policies supporting the law that we already have, giving more information, etc. Because, I mean, not the only thing, but I mean, it's the, I mean, we have to take an advantage that the president and the Ministry of Women, etc., they are for abortion, they're ruling for abortion. So in this way, even if they cannot change the law, they can implement public policies that are very necessary from an intersectional point of view to arrive to many women, to inform about the law, to contribute to the social decriminalization of the law.
Yeah, thanks, Yeti. And in a way, I think you've answered what I was going to ask you, which was the sort of, you know, what is the work going on in terms of the organizations that you're a part of. But I think you can pick that up because there's another sort of wider question coming in terms of tactics. But before I turn to that, I just, because I'm looking at some of the questions now, and I just maybe might start with Justina. So the question in relation to the fact that the European Parliament have passed a resolution urging member states to decriminalise abortion and promote access to sexual health services. And do you think, you know, what's happening in the European Parliament will have an impact on what's happening in Poland?
This is very hard question, and answer is even harder to say, because I don't believe that this government we have will take under consideration what is happening in the European Court, because we have many examples in other subjects of what is happening in European Court, and our governments really don't care. So especially I think in this reproductive rights, they will not take this.
Thanks. I think yeah, you would like it to have more of an impact. But yeah. So just as a question maybe for you, for all of you, which is very much about tactics, you know, and clearly there's different tactics and strategies used in different countries in terms of trying to advance reproductive rights. But in your own activism, what would you see as being the most impactful in terms of driving change for abortion access and reproductive rights? And I might go back to you, Lieta, because I think that's sort of in a way where you were finishing.
Should I start?
Yeah. Just what would you see as the most impactful? And I'm going to ask it of you all.
Of course, there have been many tactics, as we said. One have been more changing the law, supporting new public policies, etc., informing about abortion, being strategic, because in that way we can, as I said, socially decriminalize abortion to remove the stigma that is deeply attached still to abortion. And on the other hand, I think that has been very interesting, the way in which abortion has been rethought in a way, not just as the worst thing that can happen to a woman, blah, blah, blah. That was a typical framing that we had as feminists, that this is the worst thing that can happen to a woman, but we need to do it because blah, blah, blah. But more like a normal stage of our, or I don't know if stage is the word, but a normal stage of our reproductive life. Normalize abortion. I think that in that way, feminists have been very important, showing that abortion is not just pain, it can be also a joy, a reason of joy, of I don't know, angerness, of finding more people, etc. And I think in that way, feminists have been, we've been trying to show all the dimensions of abortion, and in a way also spreading information about how to complain when the law has is not being fulfilled, or is not being fulfilled, it's not being applied, or also information how to abort illegally, that because we still need to do it here in Chile. So there are many different strategies, as I said, more some of them more closely to the law and all the state things that you can do, and others are more like social mobilization and action from the civil society. grassroots organizations.
Thanks, Lieta. Thank you. Ailbhe, what would you say in terms of being the most impactful?
Well, I was just thinking there, it's so interesting to listen to everybody. I was just thinking that, of course, there are many different approaches and strategies, and it very much depends on what your objective is and what your time frame is. So, I mean, obviously, if you're going for a constitutional referendum, you behave in one way. If your objective is to ensure that Westminster does right by you, you're going to behave in another way, and so on and so forth. And I think for us, certainly in Ireland, where we were going for a constitutional referendum, it was very, very important to bring together different kind of stakeholders, different groups and organizations, and to have us all working, going in the same direction, even if we didn't agree with every single dotted I and crossed T. That was very important. And secondly, I think you really need to be very clear about your strategy, whatever it is, from the get-go. You need constantly to work on that. And the third thing I would say is that your overall strategy, and be very clear about it. The third thing, though, is how you're going to talk about the issue, because certainly in a referendum campaign, how you talk about it is important, because you're going to be speaking to the people who are going to be voting. And therefore, I think one of the things that we spent a lot of time on, as you know, was getting that kind of way of speaking about abortion, what kind of language we used. And that was something Justyna talked about as well, how we made it a topic of conversation that people could really engage with, because they don't like, people on the whole don't like talking about abortion for all kinds of reasons. But those I think are very, very important. And then fundamentally, you're always looking at mobilization, whether it's mobilizing on social media or, as I think is still very important, street activism is really, really, really important. So there's never just one thing in your strategy. I think you need, and it all needs to fit together. That's just the shorthand.
Yeah, absolutely. Emma, what would be your thoughts on this?
Well, I always like to say that art isn't going to change the law on its own, but then nothing is ever going to change the law on its own. And I think the key to that is making sure that you have a broad movement, making sure, like, we just can't have conversations with people that we agree with. We need to be in rooms where we're challenging people. We need to be in rooms where we're not normally welcome. And a lot of that is speaking truth to power and making sure that the people who are directly affected are able to speak directly to legislators and decision makers. And then the other end of that is, since the advent of the pills, but it was happening even before then with the Jane Collective and so on. But with the advent of the pills, every single woman and pregnant person in the world that gets access to the abortion pills, despite the laws, is just simply proving the idiocy of the laws. And I think that's not why they're accessing them. They're accessing them because they desperately need them in that time and in that moment. But what that type of underground or sub or super legal access does is it proves that the law is unworkable, the law is untenable, and the law can never be evenly applied. And I think the thing that most frightens the patriarchy is when we are taking the law into our own hands and sorting out our health and reproduction for ourselves, because they have no hand in it. They have nothing to do with it. And I think that's the most powerful thing.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, absolutely. And Justyna, if I come to you just on that issue in terms of tactics and what you found to be, I suppose, working in Poland.
I agree with Emma. We should be everywhere. But I am a person who is anti-political one. I really hate politics. I came from grassroots, and my goal is to support individual people, because then if we have those who normally go and vote, and they will be convinced to our things, they will decide. But till they will have a chance to vote, there must be a lot of things to do. And we, as Abortion Dream Team, we start with shocking, when we decided to show our faces with the t-shirts "Abortion is okay" in the main magazine, on the cover of the main magazine. It was really for us kind of disaster, because everybody was telling that you ruined the feminist movement in this country. And after 4 years from the moment of the discover of the magazine, everybody says abortion is okay, and this is okay. So, and what also I think is made a change here were the stories of real people. And we have learned this from Ireland, to be honest, that we have to tell about the stories of maybe sad stories about deaths, about good stories with happy ends, but we have to share this, because then we will telling about real people, not some people. And then those stories get to the minds, and people can see that this is not like some abortion, like some person who were in wanted or unwanted pregnancy, but your friend, your colleague, your daughter, your mother. This is the life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, I mean, I think we definitely know the power of stories in terms of the referendum in Ireland. Just a final question then, before we finish. And well, it's addressed to you, Justina, but actually I think, you know, it can be asked of us all in terms of really being harassed, persecuted for your work, but also recognizing that the struggle for reproductive rights is a long one. It's a long road, and it can often be 2 steps back sometimes. So it's about really, how do you protect your own health and well-being while continuously doing this work and doing it for the long haul. So I suppose it's a personal question maybe for you all in terms of what sustains you. But I might start with you, Justina, because yeah.
Sorry that I'm laughing, but this is the last thing I am thinking about.
I know, yeah, yeah.
And I spent the whole weekend with the Abortion Without Borders teams and representatives, because after the trial we have a chance to meet, so we spent the whole weekend together. And we had this idea that we all are crazy people because we don't think about taking self-care, taking rest, and we don't think about burnouts. We don't prevent this. We just work, because there are so many things to do. And maybe this is crazy, but we are those kind of people who this work is our whole life. So it's really hard to say, no, I will do step back, because there are some other things which are happening right now in the TV, or they are showing this very bad movie about fetal abnormalities in the country, and we have to react, because there is no other like people who can do this still, and it's so sad. But yes, there is no other like way of working. So maybe this is very like not bad, not good. Thinking about ourselves, but yes, there is no other way.
Yeah. And Lieta, what would you say sustains you?
I'm very ashamed, but my daughter talked to me, so I didn't hear the question correctly. So I don't want to. Could you please?
It was a question just recognizing, I suppose, how long the campaign is for reproductive rights. So just personally, what, I suppose, in terms of looking at your own self-care, well-being, what sustains you personally in terms of this?
What I'm doing in terms of this at the moment?
In terms of campaigning.
In terms of campaigning, well, we are, I mean, at the moment, we are doing a lot of work with many feminist organizations, trying to organize ourselves in the different paths that I told you. But at the right moment, we're having this discussion about our the new constitution, because one of the problems was if abortion should or not should be explicitly in the new constitution, and that would be a discussion again. But more broadly in our organization, we're working, as I told you, a lot in order. In my case, I'm currently working in the as a counselor in the Human Rights Committee in Chile. So from there, I'm also fighting and trying to guarantee sexual and reproductive rights for everyone, but also supporting feminist organization I'm part of the Feminist Lawyers Organization, and we're doing lots of alliances with other organizations like midwife feminist organizations, grassroots organizations, etc. So we're trying to build some kind of migrants, etc. Trying to build alliances and not just to defend, or to work with one group of women. Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you. Emma, what would you say just in terms of that sort of personal reflection?
Honestly, I needed therapy after the decriminalization campaign. I'm not even joking, but and I think one of the things I actually find most difficult, and it's not all the antis that I had to block on my social media, it's not having my mail tracked by the government, it's being disappointed at when other people in the movement find more energy to criticize each other than they do to criticize the people who are holding us back. And I understand that we won't all agree with each other and everything, but I do also think a lot of that comes from, if I really think about it, a lot of that comes from the fact that people get involved in activism because they've had direct experience, because there is a lot of unhealed pain and trauma about because of the terrible experiences we've been forced to endure because of these systems. And I think one of the really important things that we do with Alliance for Choice is that we have events that are social. So we have pizza and pints or karaoke or stitch and bitch, or we do things that we always tell ourselves that we're way more crack than the anti-choicers as well. But I come back to it again, like with the creative outlet that we have through some people it's writing, and for myself it would be like art and performance. It really, really helps because it helps you deal with it in a way that you don't need anybody powerful to listen to you. You can just say what you want to say for yourself, and it doesn't have to be mediated, and it doesn't have to be filtered. And I also think swearing is really, really helpful.
I like that. Thanks, Emma. And finally, Ailbhe.
I think really what sustains me and has done over the years is unfinished business and women still suffering and still not having that equality. And I think it's that sort of sense that you're driving for an idea, you're really moving towards it. But, I could never have kept going for whatever it is, number of years, without the camaraderie and the very real friendships and the support of other, mainly women, but not only women, actually, men as well. And the real sense that you have that, for me, that what you're doing has some kind of meaning in life. I know maybe that's a very naive thing, but that it really matters. And I think that's always a help. But I couldn't do it without the friendships, like with yourself and so many other women and men.
Yeah, absolutely. So that brings us to an end. Now, there is one final question, and that was, how can I get involved with the campaign in Ireland? So obviously there's lots, but I'll just maybe say two things on that. One is, please go to the National Women's Council website, because we will be doing a lot of mobilisation around the review in the South. And obviously in terms of Alliance for Choice, in terms of what's happening in the north of Ireland. And the other thing I would say is that on the 29th of this month, on October 29th, there will be a march which is recognising the death of Savita Halappanavar, and really, I suppose, a march to try to bring about wider abortion access so that every woman can have access to abortion in Ireland. So I'd really encourage people to join us on that march and go to the Women's Council website and sign up for the campaign in terms of the review. And just a final note to you all, because there's lovely messages of support and just saying how brilliant you all are. And someone has said just how much they admire you and all the work that you do. And I really join in that. This was a real pleasure. And I just really want to thank you and thank you for giving your time. And just let's continue this together, because we have to continue this together for women. So thank you, and thank you to everyone who participated this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Many
Bye.
thanks for the invitation.
Bye.
Bye.